before he was the king of the jungle, before he was a global icon worth millions, and before he redefined the very concept of the modern action hero. Edgar Rice Burroughs was a failure. Not just a minor failure, not a struggling artist in a romantic sense. Burroughs was a man who had failed at almost every single thing he had ever attempted. By the age of 35, he had failed as a soldier. He had failed as a railroad policeman. He had failed as a gold miner. He had failed as a pencil sharpener salesman. He was a man haunted by the faces of his wife and 2 children, a man with no trajectory but down. He was living in a cramped, cold water flat in Chicago, the scent of boiled cabbage and despair clinging to the walls. He had pawned his wife's last piece of good jewelry just to buy groceries, and spent his nights reading pulp magazines. Not for pleasure, but out of a desperate, bitter spite that gnawed at his insides. He famously said, "If people were paid for writing such rot as I read, I could write stories just as rotten." Welcome to Impossible Atlas. I'm Renato, and while I'm not a certified historian or a literary scholar, I am a traveler of the mind. I've spent 30 years in the world of logistics and operations, but my true passion has always been the geography of the imagination. Today, we aren't just looking at a book. We are looking at the tragedy, the desperation, and the sheer, unadulterated grit that birthed a legend. This is the real-life story of how a man who couldn't find his place in the world created a world of his own. To understand Tarzan, you have to understand the man who was drowning in the mundane. Edgar Rice Burroughs was born in 1875, a child of the post-Civil War era. He grew up in a world that was rapidly industrializing, a world where the frontier was officially declared closed by the U.S. Census Bureau in 1890. For a man with a restless spirit, this was a death sentence. Burroughs wanted the wild. He wanted the unknown. He joined the 7th Cavalry, chasing the ghost of Custer and the promise of adventure, but found only the crushing, sun-bleached boredom of garrison life in the Arizona desert, the air thick with dust and disappointment. He was discharged for a heart murmur. Another failure to add to the list. He tried his hand at everything. He worked in his father's battery business. He moved to Idaho to dredge for gold. He managed a department store. Each time, the result was the same: a return to Chicago, a return to poverty, and a return to the crushing weight of being an unsuccessful man in a society that worshipped success. By 1911, he was at his lowest point. He was working as an agent for a pencil sharpener company. Think about that for a moment. The creator of the most virile, powerful character in fiction spent his days in the stale, recycled air of Chicago offices, trying to convince bored managers to buy a better way to sharpen a pencil. It was during these long, soul-crushing hours that he began to read the pulps. These were cheap magazines, printed on rough wood pulp paper, filled with sensational tales of adventure. And as he read them, something snapped. It wasn't inspiration. It was an ego-driven rebellion. He realized that the writers of these stories weren't geniuses. They were just people who had found a way out. He didn't have a desk. He didn't have a study. He wrote on the backs of old letterheads and discarded office memos, the ghosts of failed businesses haunting the very paper he used to write. He wrote because he had to. If he didn't sell a story, his family wouldn't eat. Tarzan wasn't born from a dream of Africa. He was born from a nightmare of Chicago. Here is the most incredible fact about the creator of Tarzan. Edgar Rice Burroughs never set foot in Africa. Not once. To Burroughs, Africa wasn't a continent of real people, complex politics, or actual geography. It was a blank canvas, a place of myth and shadow. It was the dark continent, a term that dripped with both fear and fascination. A place where the suffocating rules of civilization didn't apply. He built his Africa out of fragments of National Geographic, Stanley and Livingstone's journals, and Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. But he added something else. Something darker. He added the Darwinian anxiety of the early 20th century. The world was obsessed with heredity versus environment. Could a man of noble blood remain noble if raised by beasts? Or would the beast within take over? This was the tragedy of Tarzan's parents, Lord and Lady Greystoke. They weren't explorers. They were victims of a mutiny. Cast away on a shore that didn't want them. Burroughs wrote the death of the Greystokes with a brutal efficiency. He knew the hollow ache of being abandoned by the world. He knew the suffocating feeling of watching your dreams wither and be in a small, confined space, the walls closing in with each passing day. When Tarzan's mother dies of fever, and his father is killed by Kerchak, the king of the apes, the infant is left utterly alone. This is the moment the legend begins. But it's also the moment of ultimate isolation. Tarzan is the ultimate outsider. He is too human for the apes, and too wild for the humans. He is a man without a country, a man without a language, a man who has to invent himself from scratch. But survival in the jungle is not a gentle process. It is a crucible of blood and bone. The infant Tarzan did not simply wake up one day and become the lord of the jungle. He had to earn it. Every single day. Kerchak, the king of the apes, did not welcome the strange, hairless creature into his tribe out of kindness. In the world of the Mangani, there is no kindness. There is only dominance and submission. Tarzan was tolerated because he was too small to be a threat. But as he grew, that tolerance turned to resentment. Burroughs was unflinching in his depiction of this world. Tarzan was beaten. He was starved. He was forced to fight for every scrap of food, every place to sleep. The apes tested him constantly. Pushing him to the edge of death. And then pulling back just enough to let him live another day. But something remarkable happened. Instead of breaking, Tarzan adapted. He learned faster than any ape. He understood cause and effect in ways they could not. He observed the hunting patterns of the great cats and adopted their techniques. He studied the behavior of the serpents and learned to move with their grace. He became a synthesis of every predator in the jungle. This is the critical moment that Burroughs understood, and that many adaptations have missed. Tarzan did not become the lord of the jungle because he was stronger or faster than the apes. He became the lord of the jungle because he was smarter. He understood strategy. He understood psychology. He understood that dominance is not just about physical power, it is about will. When Tarzan finally challenged Kerchak for leadership of the tribe, it was not a random act of rebellion. It was the inevitable conclusion of years of preparation. Tarzan had studied his opponent. He knew Kerchak's weaknesses, his patterns, his rage, and when the moment came, he exploited every single one of them. This was the moment of transformation. Tarzan was no longer the outsider. He was no longer the weak, hairless creature that the tribe tolerated. He was the king. He was Tarzan, lord of the jungle. And in that moment, something profound happened. He finally belonged to something. He had a place. He had a purpose. For Burroughs, this was more than just a story of physical triumph. It was a fantasy of transcendence. It was the dream of a man who had failed at everything, suddenly imagining what it would be like to be the best at something, to be the master of your domain, to have your worth recognized and validated by those around you, to never again feel the crushing weight of inadequacy. But here is the tragedy within the triumph. Tarzan had won the jungle, but he had lost his humanity in the process. He was no longer John Clayton, Lord Greystoke. He was something else entirely, something wild, something that could never truly return to the world of men. Tarzan wasn't just a character. He was a solution to Burroughs' own feelings of inadequacy. In the jungle, Tarzan didn't need a job. He didn't need money. He didn't need a pencil sharpener. He was the master of his environment. He was the Lord of the Jungle. This is one of the most fascinating parts of the original 1912 novel. Tarzan teaches himself to read. He finds the primers and books his parents left behind. And through sheer, obsessive will, he deciphers the little bugs on the page. He learns to read and write English. Before he can even speak a word of it. This was Burroughs' way of saying that blood will tell. No matter how deep the jungle, the noble heritage of the Greystokes would manifest. But it also highlighted the tragedy of his existence. He was a man who knew the word for God. But his prayers were answered only by the screech of the jungle. He knew the word for love. But his only companions were the brutal, violent apes of the tribe of Kerchak, their knuckles stained with the blood of their rivals. Burroughs didn't shy away from the brutality. His jungle was a place of constant, lethal competition. It was a reflection of the social Darwinism that was so prevalent in his time. To survive, Tarzan had to be more than a man. He had to be a predator. When Burroughs finished the story, he sent it to the All Story magazine. He was so unsure of himself that he used a pseudonym, Normal Bean. He wanted to show he was a normal human being. Despite the wild story he had written. An editor changed it to his real name. And in October 1912, the world met Tarzan. The success was And here is where Burroughs' failed business background finally paid off. He didn't just sell the rights and walk away. He incorporated himself. He became Edgar Rice Burroughs, Incorporated. He was one of the first authors to understand the power of a franchise. He moved his family to California and bought a massive estate he named Tarzana. He had finally made it. He was rich, famous, and powerful. But the tragedy didn't end with the money. He became a slave to his own creation. He had to keep writing Tarzan stories to support his lavish lifestyle. He wrote 26 of them in total. He grew to resent the character that had saved him. He wanted to be a serious writer. But the world only wanted the ape man. Why does Tarzan endure? Why, over 100 years later, are we still talking about a man raised by apes? It's because we all feel like outsiders sometimes. We all feel the crushing, relentless weight of civilization, the deadlines, the bills, the endless unspoken expectations, the feeling of being a cog in a machine you didn't build. Tarzan represents the ultimate escape. He is the part of us that wants to tear off the suit and tie and return to the wild. But he also represents the tragedy of that desire. We can never truly go back. Tarzan is a man caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. He is the impossible atlas of his own life, mapping a territory that exists only in the heart of a man who was once a failed pencil sharpener salesman in Chicago. In our next episode, we are going to do something no one has ever done. We are going to take the impossible atlas and actually visit this world. We've mapped the history. Now, we explore the geography. Join me as we take a cinematic tour of the lost world of Tarzan. Subscribe, and don't miss the journey. I'm Renato, and this is his Impossible Atlas.